The gravel crunched beneath the tires of my Audi RS7 as I pulled into the long, winding driveway of the Beaumont estate. It was 4 p.m. on Thanksgiving Thursday. The sky over Connecticut was a bruised purple, threatening snow, but the house in front of me was glowing like a beacon of warmth and excessive wealth. It was a colonial mansion, sprawling and majestic, with white pillars that looked like they belonged in a history book. Every window was ablaze with golden light. Wreaths made of real holly and imported silk ribbons adorned every door. From the outside, it looked like the perfect postcard of the American dream. I turned off the engine and sat in the silence for a moment. My hands gripped the leather steering wheel tight enough to turn my knuckles white. To the neighbors, this was the home of the Beaumont family. A dynasty. Old money. To me, it was a black hole that sucked up every dollar I made. My name is Elias Beaumont. I am 32 years old. I run a private equity firm that specializes in distressed assets. I work 80 hours a week. I haven't taken a vacation in 4 years. And I pay for everything you see. The mortgage on this mansion? Me. The landscaping bill for the pristine hedges? Me. The heated driveway melting the snowflakes before they could stick? Me. My father, Robert, had lost the family fortune a decade ago in a series of bad investments and worse gambling habits. But he couldn't let go of the image. He married Linda, a woman who treated shopping like a competitive sport, and adopted her son, Chad, a 25-year-old influencer whose only talent was spending money he didn't earn. I stepped out of the car. The cold air bit at my face. I walked up the steps, carrying a bottle of Macallan 25, a $2,000 bottle of scotch that my father had requested via text message that morning. Not happy Thanksgiving, son? Just bring the 25. Linda likes it. I rang the doorbell. I had a key, but I rang anyway. The door swung open. It wasn't my father. It wasn't Linda. It was a catering staff member in a black vest and white gloves. Good evening, sir, the waiter said, looking at my coat. Coat check is to the left. The party is in the Great Hall. I'm family, I said, stepping past him. I walked into the foyer. It smelled of roasting turkey, sage, expensive perfume, and the distinct, metallic scent of hypocrisy. Linda was holding court in the living room. She was wearing a dress that I recognized from a credit card alert on my phone last week, Saks Fifth Avenue, $4,500. She was laughing at something the mayor's wife was saying, holding a crystal flute of champagne. When she saw me, her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. Elias, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness that barely concealed the irritation. You're here. Finally. Hello, Linda, I said, holding up the bottle. I brought the scotch. She didn't thank me. She gestured to the bar. Put it over there. And try to mingle, darling. You look like a storm cloud. It's Thanksgiving. Try to look grateful. Grateful, I repeated. Right. I walked to the bar and set the bottle down. My father was there, pouring himself a drink from a different bottle. He looked older this year. The stress of maintaining the lie was carving deep lines into his face, but he covered it with a tan he got from a trip to St. Bart's, a trip I had paid for. Dad, I said. Elias, he clapped me on the shoulder, avoiding my eyes. Good to see you. Business good? Business is fine, Dad. Expensive, but fine. He winced at the subtle jab. Yes, well, we appreciate it, son. You know that. It's just, appearance is everything. You have to spend money to attract money. You've been spending my money for 10 years, Dad. I haven't seen any attract back yet. Not now, Elias, he whispered, looking around nervously to see if the guests heard. Not today. Linda has invited the creme de la creme. The mayor. The senator. We need this dinner to go perfectly. Where's Chad? I asked, looking around. Oh, Chad is showing the senator's daughter his new car in the garage, Dad said, beaming with pride. My stomach dropped. New car? What new car? The Porsche, Dad said. He leased it yesterday. He said he needed it for his brand image. He leased a Porsche? I asked, my voice rising. On whose credit? Dad coughed into his drink. Well, he is an authorized user on the Platinum card, Elias. It helps his credit score. I closed my eyes. The Platinum card. My card. The one I use for business expenses. Chad had leased a Porsche on my business account. I was about to explode. I was about to march into the garage and drag Chad out by his designer collar. But then, a bell chimed. Dinner is served, the head caterer announced. Let it go, Dad pleaded, gripping my arm. Please, Elias. For your mother's memory. Just get through dinner. We'll talk about the car tomorrow. Fine, I exhaled, the anger settling into a hard, cold knot in my chest. Let's eat. We moved into the dining room. It was spectacular. I had to give Linda credit. She knew how to spend money. The table was a masterpiece of mahogany, set for 20 people. The centerpiece was a cornucopia of exotic fruits and flowers. The china was the good stuff, Versace, gold-rimmed. The guests were finding their seats. Place cards were handwritten in calligraphy on heavy cream stock. I saw the mayor taking the seat at the head of the table, next to Dad. I saw the senator and his wife. I saw Chad, who had just walked in, smelling of weed and expensive cologne, taking a seat next to the senator's daughter. He winked at me as he sat down. Hey bro, Chad grinned. Nice tie. Little corporate though, isn't it? I ignored him. I walked around the table, looking for my name. I checked the spot next to Dad. No. That was the mayor. I checked the spot next to Linda. No. That was the local bishop. I checked the middle seats. The ends. I circled the entire mahogany table. My name wasn't there. I frowned. Maybe there was a mistake. Linda? I asked, tapping her on the shoulder. I don't see my place card. Linda turned around. She had a look of mock surprise on her face. Oh. Elias! She laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. Oh, silly me. I forgot to tell you. We had a few last-minute RSVPs. The senator's chief of staff, and Chad's new girlfriend. Space got a little tight at the main table. And since you're family, I knew you wouldn't mind making room for the guests. Making room? I looked at the table. It seated 20. There were 20 people sitting there. So where am I sitting? Linda pointed. She pointed away from the mahogany table. She pointed away from the fireplace. She pointed toward the swinging door that led to the kitchen. There, set up in the drafty corner near the pantry entrance, was a card table. It was a square, folding card table. It had a plastic tablecloth on it. A bright yellow one with turkeys printed on it. And around it were 4 small, plastic chairs. Sitting in 3 of the chairs were my cousin's children. Timmy, age 6. Sarah, age 4. And baby Leo, age 2, in a high chair. There was one empty folding chair left. It was metal. It looked cold. You put me. I started, my voice dangerously calm. You put me at the kids' table? It's not the kids' table, Linda hissed, lowering her voice. It's the overflow annex. Besides, Timmy looks up to you. You can tell him stories about whatever it is you do. Spreadsheets? I looked at my father. He was busy pouring wine for the senator. He saw me looking. He saw the card table. He looked down at his plate, refusing to meet my gaze. He was choosing his comfort over my dignity. Again. Linda, I said. I am 32 years old. I paid for this table. I paid for the turkey. I paid for the wine you are drinking. And you want me to sit on a folding chair next to a toddler? Lower your voice, Linda snapped, her eyes narrowing into slits. You are embarrassing me. If you want to sit at the big table, you should have arrived earlier to secure a spot. But you're single, Elias. You take up less space. Now be a good boy and sit down. The soup is getting cold. She turned her back on me and sat down next to the bishop, laughing loudly at a joke I didn't hear. I stood there. The room blurred for a second. The rage that had been building for 10 years, through the bailouts, the debts, the disrespect, the stolen credit cards, suddenly crystallized. It stopped being hot anger. It cooled down into something frozen. Something sharp. I looked at the main table. I saw Chad high-fiving the senator's daughter. I saw Linda preening. I saw my father cowering. They were feasting on the carcass of my labor. They were parasites who had convinced themselves they were the host. And they had just exiled the host to the corner. Okay, I whispered to no one. Okay. I walked over to the card table. Timmy looked up at me with wide eyes. He had spaghetti sauce on his face. Hi, Elias, Timmy chirped. Are you in timeout too? I looked at the metal chair. I sat down. My knees hit the bottom of the table, shaking it, making the plastic cups wobble. No, Timmy, I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. I'm not in timeout. I'm just pressing the reset button. I unlocked my phone. I opened my banking app. I opened the credit card administrator portal. At the main table, the first course was being served. Lobster bisque with truffle oil. Waiters were circling, pouring the vintage wine. Chad was loudly ordering a bottle of Dom Perignon from the head waiter. Put it on the house tab, Chad shouted. The waiter nodded and pulled out a handheld card terminal. He walked over to my father to swipe the card on file for the incidentals, the extra alcohol, the overtime for the staff, the caviar upgrade Linda had ordered last minute. I watched from the kids' table. My thumb hovered over the screen of my phone. The screen displayed my accounts. Primary account, Beaumont Family Trust. Status, active. Linked cards 5. Authorized users, Robert, Linda, Chad. I tapped the Manage Cards tab. I saw Linda's card. Status, active. I saw Chad's card. Status, active. I saw the house expense card the waiter was about to swipe. Status, active. I took a deep breath. The smell of the truffle oil wafted over to the kids' table. It smelled expensive. I looked at Linda one last time. She wasn't looking at me. She was toasting the room. To family, she shouted. And to prosperity. To prosperity, I whispered. I tapped the button next to Linda's card. Freeze card. I tapped the button next to Chad's card. Freeze card. I tapped the button next to the house expense card. Freeze card. Then, for good measure, I tapped the button for the main checking account. Lock all transfers. The app processed for a second. A little spinning wheel. Then, 4 green checkmarks appeared. Status, frozen. Status, stolen/lost reported. I put the phone face down on the sticky plastic tablecloth. I picked up a chicken nugget from Timmy's plate. So, Timmy, I said, dipping the nugget in ketchup. Do you like magic tricks? Timmy nodded enthusiastically. Good, I said, watching the waiter approach my father with the card machine. Because I'm about to make this entire dinner party disappear. The dining room was loud with the hum of expensive conversation. Nobody was looking at the card table in the corner. Nobody was looking at me. I dipped another chicken nugget into the plastic cup of ketchup. I took a bite. It was cold and rubbery, but in that moment, it tasted like justice. Watch the man in the black vest, Timmy, I whispered to my 6-year-old cousin. He's about to do something funny. The head waiter, a tall man named Pierre who took his job very seriously, stepped up to my father's side. He held a sleek, black wireless card terminal. Mr. Beaumont, Pierre said softly, trying to be discreet. For the additional vintage wines and the caviar service Mrs. Beaumont requested, we just need to pre-authorize the incidentals card. As is standard. Of course, Dad said, waving a dismissive hand, not even looking up from his conversation with the mayor. Just run it on the file. The platinum. Pierre tapped the screen. He inserted the card that was kept on file. Beep. 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 It wasn't a loud sound. It was a digital, 3-tone trill. But to a man like my father, who lived on the edge of financial ruin, it was the sound of a gunshot. Pierre frowned. He pulled the card out, and wiped the chip on his apron. He inserted it again. Beep. 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 My father stopped talking. He looked up at the waiter. Is there a problem? It seems the card is not communicating, sir, Pierre said diplomatically. It says declined? Declined? Linda's head snapped around. Her smile vanished. That's impossible. That's an unlimited black card. Run it again. I have run it twice, madam. The bank says do not honor. The conversation at the main table faltered. The senator paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. Don't be ridiculous, Linda hissed, her voice tight. It's a glitch. The machine is broken. Robert, give him another card. Use the gold one. My father reached into his jacket pocket. He was starting to sweat. He pulled out his wallet. His hands were shaking slightly. He pulled out the gold business Amex. My secondary card. He handed it to Pierre. Try this one. Sorry about that, everyone. Technology, am I right? He laughed nervously. Nobody laughed back. Pierre inserted the gold card. I watched the little screen from across the room. I knew exactly what it was going to say. Beep. 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 Decline, Pierre said, his voice losing a fraction of its warmth. Code 05. Do not honor. The silence in the room was now absolute. The only sound was the clinking of silverware from the kids' table as Timmy dropped his fork. This is absurd. Linda stood up, her face flushing a deep, ugly red. We are the Beaumonts. We do not get declined. Chad, give him your card. The one for the Porsche account. We'll sort this out with the bank tomorrow. Chad, looking annoyed at having his flirting interrupted, pulled a sleek metal card from his blazer pocket. Chill, Mom. It's probably just a fraud alert because we're bawling so hard. He tossed the card to the waiter with a swagger that made me want to vomit. Put the whole thing on there, my man. Keep the change. Pierre caught the card. He looked at Chad with impatience. He inserted the card. I took a sip of Timmy's apple juice box. Beep. 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 Declined, Pierre said. This time, he didn't lower his voice. Stolen/lost reported. Stolen? Chad jumped up, knocking his chair back. Bro, that card is fresh. I used it yesterday to lease my 911. Well, sir, Pierre said, his French accent becoming sharper, colder. The bank says it is stolen. Which means I cannot return it to you. I have to cut it. You're not cutting my card. Chad lunged forward. Sit down, the senator barked. It was the voice of authority, the voice of a man who realized he was sitting at a dinner party that was imploding. Chad froze. He sat down, sulking. Linda looked around the table. Her eyes were wild. She looked at the mayor. She looked at the bishop. She saw their expressions changing from respect to pity, to suspicion. Robert, Linda whispered to my father. Fix this. Now. I don't understand, Dad stammered, frantically checking his phone. My banking app. It's locked out. It says access denied. Pierre cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Beaumont. The total outstanding balance for the catering, the staff, and the vintage wines is $16,000. We require payment immediately to continue service. Otherwise. Otherwise what? Linda shrieked. You'll leave? In the middle of Thanksgiving? Otherwise we pack up, Pierre said. And I will be forced to call the police for theft of services. It is company policy for bills over $10,000. Police? The mayor choked on his water. Robert, what is going on here? Nothing. Dad waved his hands. Just a misunderstanding. A banking error. He looked around the room, desperate for a lifeline. His eyes scanned the table. No one offered to pay. Why would they? They were guests. Then, his eyes landed on the corner. On the drafty annex. On the kids' table. He saw me. I was leaning back in my metal folding chair, wiping ketchup off my lip with a SpongeBob napkin. I locked eyes with him. I raised my plastic cup in a mock toast. Dad's face went pale. He realized. He stood up slowly. He walked away from the head of the table. He walked past the senator, past the bishop, past his weeping wife. He walked all the way to the kids' table. He stood over me. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Elias, he whispered, so the guests wouldn't hear. Your cards. The ones you gave us. They aren't working. I know, I said, my voice calm. I cancelled them. Dad gripped the edge of the flimsy card table. You what? I cancelled them, I repeated, loud enough for Linda to hear. And I froze the accounts. Why? Dad hissed. Why would you do this? Now? Today? Because, I said, standing up. My metal chair scraped loudly against the floor. I'm sitting at the kids' table, Dad. The kids' table? Dad looked confused. This is about a seat? Elias, be reasonable. We can find you a chair. We can squeeze you in. It's not about the chair, Robert, I said. I stopped calling him Dad. It's about the respect. You lease Porsches on my credit. You drink $2,000 scotch on my dime. You invite half the town to a mansion I pay for. And when I show up, you put me in the corner with the toddlers. Linda had marched over now. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my suit jacket. You ungrateful little brat, she spat. Turn them back on. Right now. Do you see who is sitting at that table? The mayor. The senator. If you ruin this dinner, we are finished in this town. You were finished a long time ago, Linda, I said, pulling my arm away. You've been bankrupt for a decade. You're just playing dress up with my wallet. Lower your voice. She shrieked. No, I said. I walked past them. I walked into the center of the room, near the main table. The guests were silent, watching the drama unfold. Pierre, I said to the head waiter. Yes, sir? Pierre looked at me. He recognized the tone of the man who actually signs the checks. The catering bill, I said. Is it covered? No, sir. All cards declined. I see. I pulled out my own wallet. I pulled out a heavy, black titanium card. My personal card. Not the family trust one. I will pay for the staff. The waiters, the cooks, the bartenders. I'll add a 25% gratuity for the inconvenience. Pierre's face relaxed. Thank you, sir. Very generous. However, I continued, looking at the table of food. I am not paying for the food. Or the wine. Or the caviar. Sir? Pack up the food, Pierre, I said coldly. Take the wine back. Take the plates. Leave them the water. Elias! Linda screamed. You can't starve our guests. I'm not starving them, I said. I'm just not feeding them. You invited them, Linda. You pay for them. Oh, wait. You can't. Because you have $12 in your personal checking account. The mayor stood up. He wiped his mouth with his napkin. Robert, I think we should go. This is unfortunate. No. Mr. Mayor, please. Linda begged, grabbing his sleeve. It's a joke. A family prank. It doesn't look like a joke, Linda, the senator's wife said, standing up and grabbing her purse. It looks like fraud. The guests started to stand up. The scraping of chairs was the sound of the Beaumont social status crumbling to dust. But I wasn't done. I turned to Chad. He was sitting there, looking terrified, scrolling frantically on his phone. Chad, I said. He looked up. What, bro? You think you're cool? I think I'm the owner of the company that leased your Porsche yesterday, I said. Since I froze the business assets due to suspected embezzlement about 10 minutes ago, the leasing company has a strict policy. Chad's face went white. What policy? From outside, through the large bay windows of the dining room, flashing yellow lights appeared in the driveway. A tow truck. It backed up to the garage. The reverse beeping sound echoed the sound of the declined credit cards. Remote repossession, I smiled. I have the app for the car too, Chad. I unlocked it for them. It's already in neutral. My car! Chad screamed. He ran to the window. We all watched as the tow truck driver hooked up the gleaming silver Porsche 911. The car Chad had used to impress the senator's daughter. The car he hadn't made a single payment on. You can't do that. Chad turned to me, tears in his eyes. I have a date tonight. Not anymore, I said. The senator's daughter just left with her parents. And I think you're going to be busy explaining to the police why you used a corporate card for personal leasing. That's a felony, Chad. Chad slumped against the window, defeated. The room was almost empty now. The guests had fled. The catering staff was efficiently packing up the lobster bisque and the turkey. The table was stripped bare, leaving only the Versace plates and the bitter taste of ruin. Dad sat in the mayor's empty chair. He put his head in his hands. Linda stood in the center of the room, trembling with rage. Get out, she whispered. Get out of my house. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. Your house? I asked. I walked over to the coat check. I grabbed my coat. That's the last thing, Linda, I said, buttoning my coat. I spoke to my real estate attorney on the drive over. Since the mortgage payments come from the trust, and the trust is now frozen pending an audit. I looked at the beautiful, expansive mansion. This house is going on the market on Monday. I'm liquidating the asset. You have 30 days to vacate. I suggest you start packing the Versace plates. They might fetch a good price at a pawn shop. I walked to the door. Happy Thanksgiving, I said. I walked out into the cold night air. The tow truck passed me, carrying the Porsche away. I got into my Audi. I looked back at the house one last time. The lights were still on, but I knew, inside, it was dark. I drove away. I stopped at a diner 5 miles down the road. I ordered a turkey club sandwich and a slice of pumpkin pie. I sat in a booth. It wasn't mahogany. The silverware wasn't gold. But I sat at a table for adults. And I paid with my own card. It was the best meal I ever had.